Alright, if you're tuning into this video, then you are reviewing or you are participating in the rounding using models and number lines practice. So what we're going to practice on this video is writing a value, writing it as a fraction, shading in the model, and then deciding when we're rounding, what place value we're rounding to and what it is the best value. So the first number that we're going to write in will be 1 and 3/10. 1 and 3/10. So if you're tuning in, you need to record that value on your paper. The very next thing that we want to do is we want to label those place values. Labeling the place values will ensure and help us when we are writing the fraction and determining the place that we're valuing at, that we're rounding to. So the 1 is in the ones place, and so I expect you always to label these places, and the 3 is in the tenths place. Now that we've recorded the values of each number, we can quickly turn this into a fraction that is equivalent. So a 1 is a whole number. It gets to stand all by itself. The number 3 is our numerator. And because it's in the tenths place, our denominator is 10. So this is the equivalent. So right now, I'm going to put a little equal sign right here and a little equal sign here because we want these three values to be equivalent. We want our fraction, we want our picture, and we want our decimal to all show the same value. To show the same value, we're going to start by shading our model. So when I see the whole number 1, I'm going to outline my whole box, and I'm going to quickly shade it in. And a lot of times to quickly shade, I just do some diagonals to show that it is shaded. It's a quick way to get that shading. And then to also show 3/10, I have a tenths model here, and I need to shade in 3 of those pieces. So I'm going to count over 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. And outlining that, and again doing the diagonals, will help me shade quickly and efficiently. Alright, now that we've got our models, we need to go ahead and come up with our endpoints for our number line. So the first thing that I want to do is go back over here to what is it that we're rounding to? We're rounding to the nearest whole number. So the nearest whole number is going to be the number 1. You should be circling the number 1 on your paper. Now that we've circled the number 1, we know that our endpoint is going to start with 1 whole. And if we're rounding to the nearest whole number, then we're counting by wholes. So what number would come after the number 1? Think to yourself. That's right, the number 2. So the number 2 is going to be our endpoint. So basically our answer is going to be somewhere between the number 1 and the number 2. Or, I'm sorry, the number 1 or the number 2. We need to come up with our midpoint, and so we have to think about what number could come between 1 and 2. So a halfway point could be, and I like to add a 0 because I think it's much easier to think about when I think about money. What could be between $1 and $2? And that's right, $1.50 or 1.5. Sometimes I like to write 1.5, sometimes I like to add that 0 just because it's easier for me to think about. When I think about the numbers in order from 1 to 2, with 1.5 being in the middle, and I refer back to 1.3, I know that 1.3 is going to come before 1.5. So that marking will go here, 1.3. Now it's just a matter of deciding which number is closer. Is the number 1 closer or the number 2? And that's right. The number 1 is closer, so our estimated number is going to be 1 whole. So 1.3 rounds to 1 whole when rounding to the nearest whole number.